First Person Advisors is now a subsidiary of NFP, the fifth largest insurance broker in the world, combining local expertise with access to global capabilities and solutions. Learn more at firstpersonadvisors.com.
Wins in Texas to kick the season off.
Well done, Scott.
Second no more. Scott Dixon wins the GMR Grand Prix at Indianapolis.
You're the first guy that's going to get
hours before the race, I've already switched off.
left.
Scott Dixon wins 3 in a row to start the 2020 NTT INDYCAR season. Unbelievable.
Behind you.
Totally focused and thinking about only racing and just winning. You know, that's what it's all about.
Coming through turn number 4, Scott Dixon is going to complete his perfect storm with a win at the Indianapolis 500.
Inside the mind of a racing champion, 6 IndyCar Series championships, third behind AJ and Mario in all-time open-wheel racing wins, and a leader among active drivers in wins. But for Scott Dixon, it was that magical ride to victory at the 92nd running of the world's greatest spectacle in racing that brought him full circle, or in this case, full oval, a dream he'd had since he was a boy growing up in the land down under. One of the greatest to ever get behind the wheel of a race car. Scott Dixon, my guest on this edition of the Business and Beyond podcast. Hello and welcome to the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. I'm Gary Deck. Scott Dixon got his first taste with speed when he was just 7 years old. He started racing go-karts growing up in New Zealand. There you have to be 15 to get a license to race. Dixon got special permission to get one when he was just 13. He went on to race with a cushion strapped to his back so that he could reach the pedals. Dixon's racing career took off not long after that. He was just 20 years old when he won his first open-wheel race. 2 years later, qualified fourth for his first Indy 500, and finally conquered the beast by winning the race in 2008. Scott and his wife, Emma, are raising their family here in Central Indiana. And it is a great pleasure to welcome Scott Dixon to the podcast this week. Scott, thanks for joining me.
No, it's always it's definitely a pleasure, and thank you. And it's the greatest month of racing, I guess, around the world is the month of May. So excited to kick that off, and hopefully we can finish in the right spot. Be drinking some milk.
Yeah. You obviously have a very global perspective, but what is it about Indianapolis? What kind of, you get that special feeling? I mean, those of us who live here and have done business here for many years get it around the race. How about for a driver? You get a special feeling around this time of year?
Well, I think, it's sometimes hard to explain. And for myself coming from New Zealand, the biggest thing is like, you've got to come to this race, this spectacle, the Indianapolis 500. It is the biggest race in the world, almost 400,000 people. For me, I lived in Indy for probably 2 years racing in a different category and never went to the race and went as a part of Chip Ganassi Racing when I first signed with them back in 2002. And I was like, wow, I get it. It's I've been to Olympic Games, Super Bowls, World Cups, and nothing has a touch on the Indianapolis 500. But, honestly, for me, I think it's the tradition. This race has been going on for over 100 years. The sheer size of it, but what the community brings to it, what America loves about this race is the tradition, and people been sitting in the same seats for generations, So like anything, as we spoke earlier, it's never one thing, it's a multitude of so many, but it is the biggest race in the world. And that's why this city gets pumped.
Yeah. What is the month of May, to give people an idea, the month of May like for you? Obviously focus on the track and qualifying and in practice and all those kinds of things. But there are extra things, obviously, you do for sponsors and otherwise. What's kind of is it a hectic month for you scheduling wise?
It's crazy. I think you kind of got a brief insight to that too. I think through the past 2 years where, it was altered with COVID and the one in 2020 where we, raced with no fans, but, we also had no interaction with, the community outreach programs, hospital visits to the charity events. There's something pretty much every night and every day. Going back to when I first started in the early 2000s at Speedway, the month of May was a lot bigger as far as the on-track stuff that you had. It was almost a 2 or 3 week experience, whereas now we kind of start, this month with, the race on the road course. Then we kind of have a week of practice leading into qualifying. And then you kind of go into the race. So it is more compressed, a lot of track time during those days. The days are longer. But it's busy. You are having to say no a lot of the time, unfortunately,
right,
just because there are so many things that you can be doing, around the community and for after the racing hours. But it is fun to be a part of, and a lot of the stuff that we do is huge for Indianapolis.
Yeah. How do you feel heading into the 500 this year? Your team, Ganassi Racing, amazing stable of drivers. Obviously, you, a defending series champ, a young guy, Alex Ballou, Marcus Ericsson, Jimmy Johnson, new to the series. What are your thoughts heading into the 500?
And Tony Kanaan. It's a
Tony,
5-car,
of course, yes.
So it's a 5-car stable this year. Jimmy Johnson didn't like it much sitting on the seat outside watching last year, so he made sure that he wanted to be a part of it. And I think for us, we've had really successful cars. Last year was a extreme bummer, I think, for the 9-car and the PNC Bank car, just for the sheer fact that we'd qualified on the pole, our 4th or 5th pole, and to be kind of wiped out in the first sort of part of the race just because of a caution that caught us out on fuel mileage, and they closed the pits. So it's I think even the test that we had earlier in the year, all of the cars were very strong and very fast. So I think we have a great shot. The thing I've learned the most at the Indianapolis 500 is that she almost picks the winner. I've been in great situations. I think I've been runner-up 4 or 5 times at this place, which is honestly the worst place you can finish. But still one of the lucky ones that's on a short list of 70 people that have ever won this race. But trying to go for a second one has been extremely tough. But I think that the team is strong. We've got 5 strong cars that have a great shot at winning. 2008,
you were not second, you were first, and then won the Indianapolis 500 that year. What do you remember about that race and about taking the checkered flag, just from an emotion standpoint? What are your memories of that win in 2008?
It's funny. It's the month of May from day one to the end is an emotional roller coaster from the start. And that race, I think we had such a fast car. We led almost every practice session during that month. We were started on the pole. Led almost 140 laps, I think it was, throughout the race. So for me it was just you kind of getting towards the end of the race, listening. You're like, does the engine sound funny, or does the tire feel like it's going down? You're kind of waiting, because it went so smoothly. You were kind of just waiting for something to go wrong, and then actually the checkered flag was out. I still went past, flat out through turn 1 because nobody had said anything on the radio. So I was going to do 502.5 miles for that race, because I was, I didn't even see the finish. So for me, I guess it just wanting to get back to the pits, to see my family, to see my wife, to see all the team members that made it possible, and share that memory. But even for like a week or 2 later, I still didn't think it was real. It was just coming from New Zealand, a small country. I'd seen this race for so many times, watch the likes of Mario or AJ Foyt or Rick Mears, to be in that situation where you're putting the reef over your head and drinking the milk. It just felt like you were in a dream, So one of the coolest feelings I've ever been a part of, and that makes it's tricky because it makes you want it that much more again. So hoping that will happen.
Well, you've been in victory circles so many times over your career. In fact, doing a little research on this, you have won. Now, correct me if these numbers are off, but 51. You have 51 wins, which is tops among all current IndyCar drivers, and you only trail AJ Foyt, Mario Andretti. You're 1 behind Mario, and AJ has 67, I think. Does that motivate you too? I mean, when you think about numbers, I know statistics, but that is those are some amazing numbers. They really are.
Yeah, we've been very fortunate as a team, and yes, we've won a lot of races. I think 19 seasons maybe we've won a race, which is also a record. But we're the big chase is championship number 7. We're second on 6, behind AJ. Obviously, we're in the business of winning races, and if you're winning races, then championships come as well. So, for me, I think stats are something that hopefully you reflect on, and when you possibly retire or leave the sport, that you're happy with what you achieved. And it definitely became a lot more of a topic of conversation over the last few years when we started to climb those ranks. Passing Michael Andretti and the Answers and some crazy names. So for me, it's kind of, it feels weird to be a part of, the names of Andretti, Foyt, Unser, just bizarre. So I'm so happy to be a part of this family, to be in the INDYCAR series and to be a part of it. But, you always want more. So, hopefully we can tie Mario here soon and pass him as well.
Very good. How would you describe, Scott, the state of the INDYCAR series as we sit here now in May of 2022?
I think it's in a great place. The TV package with NBC that they signed was huge. I think almost 80 or 90% of our races are on NBC. I think the sponsorship packages and car count. Even if you look at car count, I think we got 27 or 28 cars here for the race here, and then obviously we'll have the 33 locked in for the 500. But to see that kind of car count at every race is pretty crazy, and that's normally a good sign of the health of business. So there was a switch a couple of years ago with Roger Penske purchasing the Indianapolis 500 and the Speedway with also the series. So I think with his pull and his leadership and the people that he has involved, has given it not a breath of fresh air, because I think they were definitely on the right trajectory anyway, but it gives it, that kind of, punch behind it. So it's exciting times, I think, especially for the future of IndyCar racing as a whole and everybody involved.
Yeah. What just to add on to that, Scott, in terms of Penske's ownership of the Speedway and the series, from your perspective, obviously accomplished business executive, accomplished racer and team owner. What does his ownership bring to the table? And are there some tangible things you've seen since his ownership began that you can point to as some of the positive changes?
I think with Roger, and probably just his name is confidence, right? I think if someone is getting called by the IndyCar series and Roger Penske, it's going to be important, and you probably need to do the deal and do the business. But I think it's success. I think if you look at his track record, whether it's on the business side or even the racing side, which there's so many parallels in how those function, as a whole. So I think it's really understanding that you can trust this person. He's going to work hard for it. It's not a fly by night kind of company that's just trying to get a quick buck or anything like that. And for me, I respect Roger greatly. I've had to race against him for the past 20 years and unfortunately get beaten many times. So again, for me, I think it's the name, it's the success that he's had, but obviously his work ethic is if anybody tells you about it, his work ethic is crazy. Even, he's in early 80s now, middle 80s. Yeah. So, he's still up 2-3, a.m. in the morning, making calls and making sure people are, getting stuff done. So, I respect him greatly, and I know he's going to do a tremendous job for this series.
Yeah. Well, your racing career, Scott, began a long way from Indianapolis. Grew up in New Zealand. What was growing up like for you in New Zealand?
New Zealand it's kind of weird. Growing up in New Zealand, you don't realize how far away from the rest of the world you are or how small the country is. But, it's also a beautiful place. It's kind of like you're stepping back in time a little bit too. And for all the good reasons, I feel where it's a little more laid back as well, especially in the, kind of the fast business that everybody has right now. But for me, there was always a rich racing heritage and history to New Zealand. The likes of Bruce McLaren, Chris Amon, Kenny Smith was a huge hero of mine growing up, and taught me a lot through my junior categories. So racing was just one of those things. My dad had done it in junior categories or not professional stuff, mostly club racing. But for me, what inspired me was going and seeing my cousins race one weekend in go-karts, and I just hammered on my parents for 2 weeks straight until they finally caved in, and we started racing go-karts every weekend. So yeah, I love New Zealand. It's a beautiful country for one. It's a fantastic country, and a great work ethic on anything that you could think of. And I miss it a lot. I wish I was able to get home more often.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned go-karts, and you started, as I understand, you started racing karts as a 7-year-old, and then you progressed on. And doing a little research, I saw that New Zealanders could not get a license until age 15 then, but you got one at age 13. Is that right?
Yeah, so I think most of the rules for racing drivers, and I think a lot of countries are still that way. You have to have a road bearing license, drive a road car, and in New Zealand at the time you could actually get a restricted license or a learner's permit at the age of 15. But there was kind of like a little underline that said, if you could get signed off by a racing professional or a steward at the time, that you may be able to race, and that's what we went for. So I had some special days out at Pukekohe Raceway, driving. I can't even. I think it was like a Suzuki Swift, this little like two-door. And my first time on track, the craziest thing happened. Going through this very fast corner with walls either side. I come around the corner. I've got this passenger with me that's telling me what to do, and a family of ducks are walking across the racetrack. And I swerve to miss them and spin out at about 120 miles an hour to avoid the ducks. And luckily I missed all the walls. We did the spin through the paddock, and the driver coach at the time was like, okay, next time, if that happens ever again, just hit the ducks. Do not try to avoid the ducks. So, so we got the special dispensation. And at that time, I was the youngest in the world to drive Formula cars, Formula V at the age of 13. And it's still probably got to be close to a record. I don't know how it is now, but I think it definitely paved the way for generations to start racing at a younger age. Yeah.
How did you matriculate to the United States?
So, I raced until I was 15, 16 in New Zealand, and then progressed to Formula Holden, which was Formula 3000 version, Australia version in Australia. So I moved from New Zealand by myself at the age of 16 and started living in Melbourne for 2 years. And then we were actually traveling to Europe, going to the UK to test in Formula 3, I think with Alan Docking at the time, which was a team owner, and got a call to test in Indy Lights in Sebring, Florida on the way, and went there. The test went amazingly well. And they signed us kind of the following week to race. And, we had no money. So, for us, we were kind of just grasping at straws anyway to see where it could go. And through Stefan Johansson, who is still my manager today, and Vern Schuppen, they signed me to drive in their Indy Lights team. And the rest is history. I never made it to Europe, never went to Europe. Went a few years later to test in Formula One. But that was how I've been here ever since.
Yeah. What's the journey like? You mentioned a young guy, starting out, people like you. You don't have any money though. What is that journey like, that process like for these young drivers back when you were at that age, but also today to make it, because money is such an important part of the equation?
It is tough. It's not your typical, stick and ball sport. It is expensive, and we definitely found that dilemma, so thankful for my parents to get me kind of to the age of 16 where they funded pretty much all of it. But then we did get to a point where it just wasn't possible. So my dad actually came up with the idea of starting an investors group of New Zealand businessmen that were trying to get young talent to the world stage in motor racing that were basically gearheads in their own right. And so we got a group of 13 to 14 people together, set up an investment group called, I think it was called Scott Dixon Motorsport, and they funded for living costs and, crash budgets. And, some of the things weren't covered when I first came to America. The testing package, you're talking still, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 of payments each year. So that was kind of the first version. I think we've seen many versions throughout recent history with different drivers and how they've been trying to do it, which has also got me into another space with a company called Garage XYZ, which is an NFT, and they're trying to do that too, to promote and help young talent get through those links. So for me, it was the perfect story, right? We put the group together. We, ended up becoming an INDYCAR driver probably 3-4 years later. And I was able to pay them back over the first 2-3-4 years of my earning career. So that's the perfect story. And I'm sure, they haven't all gone as smoothly as that one. But, without that group of 13 or 14 investors, for me, it would have never happened.
Yeah. And obviously you achieved success at a very young age. In fact, you were I believe, just 20 years old when you won your first IndyCar race at Nazareth in 2001, and then 2 years later you were at the Indy 500, right?
Yeah, so it's it was a crazy ride. Honestly, here in America, first year went really well in Indy Lights, won the championship in Indy Lights the second year, and then got promoted to kart, which was there was two kind of IndyCar series going on at the same time, and to get I think it was the fourth or fifth race of the season to get a victory was mind blowing, and I was the youngest in the world to win a major open wheel race, and for me, again, it was one of those stories where I was like, I can't believe that just happened. So we won it on strategy in a different kind of way of winning that race, but for me it was I was like, we're here, we can do this, and it was exciting. So we had help along the way with the investment stuff, but quite honestly, you have to get the results, and we did that.
Yeah, and at Indy, that first trip to Indy, you led 15 laps, I think. We're looking at a top 5 finish, then had a spin out, unfortunate situation.
Yeah, that race, honestly, I think we could have won that race. We had so much speed, but we actually had a fuel pickup issue. So every time we got to half tanks, the car would run out of fuel. So I think we did many more stops than anybody else during the race. We were laps down and were able to race our way back up. So it's one of those stories where you feel like you have the speed and the possibilities to win a race, but it gets taken away from you. But yeah, I was definitely with, a great team. Obviously the first year with the team, and later that year we go on to win the championship, so it was a big year, man.
Yeah, special year. Hey, we'll have much more with IndyCar champion Scott Dixon, special relationship with his wife, Emma, that goes beyond, in many respects, husband and wife, and why they call Indy home. That and much more when the Business and Beyond podcast returns.
First Person Advisors is now a subsidiary of National Financial Partners, the 5th largest insurance broker and consultant in the world. Develop your total reward strategies all in one place with the combination of First Person's local expertise and NFP's global resources and integrated solutions. Learn more at firstpersonadvisors.com.
Welcome back to the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. My guest this week is championship IndyCar driver Scott Dixon. Scott, Indianapolis is a special place to you. You won the Indy 500 and been such an incredible competitor here at the Speedway as well. But you and your wife Emma essentially call Indy home year round, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely base for us. I'm from New Zealand, obviously, and then my wife's, from UK. So, I guess America's in the middle, Indianapolis is in the middle. But I've loved living here. I first kind of came to Indy in 1999 and then started living here full time in 2000. So I guess I'm a qualified Hoosier now. But I love this city. Obviously, for obvious reasons of the racing and everybody loves racing, but everybody is just it's so lovely. And for us, the size of the city is great too. It's not too crazy, it's not too hectic, and for us flying and jumping around to different cities, it's a great place to bring up our children, and we love everybody here in Indy.
Yeah, and I know you and your wife both are really engaged in the community in a lot of ways. And one of the big sponsors, PNC, I know has an intern program with women focused on getting more women in motorsports, and are going to be launching a big initiative around that here during the month of May. Talk about, if you would, that relationship with PNC. Their early education, I know, is a big focus as well, but also women in motorsports and making that happen as well.
Yeah, PNC have been an amazing partner, and not just from the simple stuff of sponsoring a car, but it's all about the community outreach. And the program started with the Grow Up Great initiative, and what we do is lead into most of the races that we go to. We do a book reading with a lot of kids, and they really touch on trying to make sure that everybody has the opportunity, and not just providing stuff for the children and books and things like that, but also for the teachers. And it's been a lot of fun. Trust me, over the period of COVID, with doing it all on Zoom was very tricky. Trying to get hundreds and sometimes thousands of kids to try and tune in and watch peacefully me reading a book was difficult. But thankfully this year we've been back into a lot of in classroom stuff, and it's been great. They've done a tremendous job. But for this year, Women in Motorsport campaign, and it's a joint effort between PNC Bank and Chip Ganassi Racing. They're helping drive the gender equality in motor racing, and not always an easy thing. It's very much known as a man's sport, but women playing just do things a lot better sometimes. And it's great to have I think that whole group working together. So this month they've started Inspire Young Women, and they're having 5 college students. We've got a fully funded internship from around the country, starting in the month of May, and then working throughout the summer and for the season. So doing lots of races, but I think one of their biggest races is coming up first with the Indy 500. So it's exciting, and they're going to be working from management level, to the engineering side, to the athletics side. There's so many different divisions within these racing companies, and kudos to PNC for that.
You and your wife Emma married in 2008, just a few months before the Indy 500. So that 2008 was a special year for you, to be sure. How did you meet?
Well, we actually met a few years previously through a mutual friend, and then I was in England testing in Formula One, and was hanging out. Actually, I had no one to go out with for a night, and called a friend, and he was like, "Yeah, I've got some friends going out," and that's how it all started. And it's definitely a little different for Emma. Emma has a background in running. She was a runner for Great Britain. Her specialty, which is probably the hardest discipline, was the 800 meters. Wow. So she made Olympic teams and also did Commonwealth Games. So she's a huge athlete, and just her. I get it from both sides. Chip Ganassi on the racing side, who's probably the most competitive person I know, and then when I come home, my wife is probably the other most competitive person I know. So, it kicked off fast. 2008 was a big year. We got married in February. Went on to win the 500 in May. Won the championship in September, and then Emma was pregnant at the end of the year. So 2008 was a big year for us. But love her to bits. She's such a special person, and has helped me in so many ways on the racing side as well.
Yeah, and beyond that obvious husband and wife relationship, the fact that she was a world-class athlete, competitive. What does that bring? Kind of the back and forth between the two of you, your professional career, all the things you have going. There's kind of seems to be a meshing, kind of a nice connection there from that standpoint.
Yeah, for sure. I think the biggest thing is the emotional side. The knowing the ups and downs, knowing sometimes how to deal with getting beat, enjoying the moments of when you win. It seriously is a massive roller coaster, and I think it's really helpful when you have somebody that's been through a lot of that stuff previously. But on, even if it comes to nutrition, or she was the engine, right? So she knew how to push your body to new extremes, to know what to put into your body. So it helped. A lot of that stuff was not always something I thought too much about, but because racing has become so physical, it was another attribution to that. So yeah, I don't know, but I think it's more that we're both super competitive people. We love being competitive, and to have that partner that's there with you and pushing you as hard is huge, and has been huge.
Yeah. Speaking of the highs and the lows, and there have been far more highs than lows, what, in your view, makes Ganassi racing so successful? Are there secrets to the success of Ganassi racing? Because it has been truly a juggernaut in IndyCar racing.
Honestly, I would say it's the people. I think that's what it really comes down to. Chip is obviously, steering this ship. As I said earlier, he's one of the most competitive people I've ever met. And to work for someone that's always, pushing the boundaries, whether it's on the technology side to partnerships, and partners are another big key, whether it's with Honda or, GM or, Ford and a lot of these partnerships that he's had. But wholeheartedly comes down to the people, and the mindset. Everybody, I as soon as I walked through that door in 2002, I was like, wow, I now understand why. The vibe of just, the grit and the determination that this place has had, but also with compassion as well. They're not, they're not all mad and angry or anything like that. But, it's just that common goal of, if you don't win, you got to do better, and they continue to surprise me. This is my 21st season with the team. We've won 6 championships along the way, almost 51 races, and they keep pushing extremely hard. So yeah, simple answer is it's all about the people.
Yeah. Looking forward, Scott. You're still, in my view, and you look very young for sure, and you are relatively young. What bucket list next things? I know you're focused on Indianapolis right now, certainly in the month of May. But as you look bigger picture, any things out there yet to accomplish?
So right now, and honestly, all that matters to me is getting a second Indianapolis 500 win. And then if we're lucky to do so this year, then it will be a third. But and a 7th championship. It's chasing these big goals, and these really tough to do things for me are what I'm after. My sheer just focus is on IndyCar racing and winning. So I think it's difficult for a lot of people to talk about what the future brings or anything like that. For me, I just want to focus on what I'm doing right now, and that's trying to win IndyCar races.
Yeah. One other question, looking to the future, and that's the future of IndyCar racing. A lot of very talented young drivers out there now. Do you feel good about kind of where the sport is as you look to the future and some of the young talent that's out there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think they've again, I think that you can see it just by the car count. To have 27, 28, 29 cars every weekend. We always knew with the 500, you have 33 cars that start the race, but to have these high counts, some of the years we had 18 to 20 at some of these races, so it definitely looks strong. I think the amount of young talent that's coming through, a lot of young talent that's now coming through from Formula One or Europe is huge as well, and they're bringing lots of new sponsors with them. From my point of view, I think we do need to start racing at more venues. We're kind of at a 16 race series at the moment. I think we need to get to a good round number of 20 or 22 races. We need to be racing in Mexico. I think we do need to be racing in some foreign countries as well. In the off season kind of time and months, in the winter. So yeah, there's lots of areas I think that the sport can grow. But they've done a really fine job of making sure that domestically it's really strong. Entries are strong. The money coming in is strong. So many people now that are trying to get into the sport. Is why these teams are having to expand with new cars, because they don't have the space on the cars from sponsors. So it's a good situation to be in, and you're sure right. There's a lot of young, great talent coming in.
Scott Dixon, an Indy 500 champion, multiple series champion, one of the winningest drivers in all of motorsports. Scott, really appreciate you taking the time to join us today, and good luck this month and beyond.
I really appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. And thank you for joining us on this edition of the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. It's a weekly conversation with achievers in business, sports, entertainment, and beyond. And you can download all of our episodes and also get Indiana Business News 24/7. All you have to do is go to InsideIndianaBusiness.com. I'm Gary Dick. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.